All right, San Antonio and global listeners. Thank you for tuning in to Rhema Gospel Express. I'd like to say thank you. Thank you to Nina Taylor. Yes, thank you, Nina. You were a blessing this morning. And I would also like to thank Prophetess Sherry Bishop for coming in, and with Prophetess Alice Lockhart to Rhema Gospel Express, and being able to share their ministry as well. But right now, San Antonio and global listeners, many of us, we've heard of miracles. Many of us have heard, but today my guest in the house is Prophet Freddie Garcia. And he's going to be sharing with us because, there are times that we live in this world, but we hear of things, but we never heard someone one-on-one experience something. Some of us feel like we in hell right now. Some of us, I've heard on a movie that I vacationed in hell, But when you have a man of God that know what it's like to walk the walk and talk the talk and come associated with the devil, and then God like, okay, hold up, wait a minute, you don't want to put Jesus in this? Well, he's here to share with us, and I'm just going to step back because I can't tell it like he can tell it. Freddie Garcia, Prophet Freddie Garcia is here to share with you his impartation with the devil and with God.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Elder James Lockhart, I want to thank you and Rhema Gospel Express for giving me this opportunity to deliver my testimony. I want to thank God Almighty for who He is, because He's often and extremely worthy to be praised. I have a massive testimony, ladies and gentlemen, and my testimony has to do with child abuse, child molestation, and living the lifestyle of homosexuality. There's a lot of things that had happened to me as a child. I was raised in an environment or with a family with a lot of abuse and sexual abuse. I was molested hardcore as a child. And it got to the point that no matter where I would go, I would end up getting molested. And as a teenager, there was many issues going on in my life. And as a teenager, by the time I was 16 years old, I ended up leaving home. Basically, there was things happening in my house and in the environment around me that I couldn't take it anymore. So I was basically thrown out of the house, and I ended up leaving my family's home. And this is when I was 16 years old. And I was born and raised here in Texas, and I ended up moving to California. I was invited over there by a family member, and within the first month of me living there, and it was in Bakersfield, California. After arriving home, or the place I was staying at the time, I was thrown out into the streets. And during this time, many things had happened to me, and basically, I was molested as a child. Things happened to me as a teenager growing up, molestation and everything, no matter what. It got to the point that no matter where I would go, one way or another, I would end up getting molested, either by a family member, a friend, so-called friend, or my friend's family. And it was something as a child that I never went out to go look. As a child, I remember hiding. I would go and hide. I would hide under beds. I would hide no matter where I would be able to hide, and I would actually be found, and things happened to me. And as a teenager, now living in California, in Bakersfield, California, within the first month that I arrived there, basically I was thrown out to the streets, and at that time I had nowhere to go. And that night that I was thrown out into the streets, there was no way for me to call home or call my family, because basically I was not welcome at home because of issues that had happened to me at my house. So what ended up happening, and I ended up walking down the streets aimlessly. I had nowhere to go. I was in Bakersfield, California. It was nighttime, and I remember having my bag of clothes, because the people that I was staying with at the time, when I went to their house, basically they gave me a bag of clothes, a bag of my clothes. And it was no suitcase or anything. It was actually a trash bag. And they gave me my clothes, and I walked down the streets. I had nowhere to go. And I remember seeing this restaurant. They were closing down, and I saw a dumpster out there, and I ended up putting my clothes right there by the dumpster. And I walked in this restaurant, and I sat there. I was just completely lost. My mind was gone. And I remember I saw these people There was some Chinese workers there, and I saw these people cleaning the tables. And the next thing you know, this gentleman comes and he starts wiping the table down, the one that I was sitting at, and he asked me, he goes, "Are you okay?" Because I guarantee you, I looked scared. I was young, hopeless. I had nowhere to go. I did not know what to do. I had no one to call. And I told him, I said, "I just been thrown out in the streets and I have nowhere to go. I don't know what I'm going to do." And he was like, "What?" And he goes, "You know what? Just wait right there. Let me see what I can do." And I saw him taking off, and he was wiping other tables down. And within a few minutes, he came back and he said, "You know what? Let me see if I can help you." Because I go ahead and invite you to my house tonight. And I'm like, I said, "Wow, thank you." And so after a few more minutes, they ended up closing down. I go back and I get my clothes from the dumpster, and we walk to his house. He lived a few blocks away. And when we were walking over to his house, the next thing you know he was telling me, he goes, "There's something I got to tell you." And he was already going to unlock the door to his apartment. And I'm like, at the time I was tired, I was exhausted, I wanted somewhere to go and get my rest. And right when before he unlocked his door, he told me, he goes, "Freddie, there's something I need to tell you." He goes, "I'm a homosexual." His name was Benny. He goes, "I'm a homosexual," and I was like, "What?" He goes, "I'm gonna unlock my door to my house." He goes, "I'm gonna let you know the lifestyle that I'm living." He goes, "But I'm gonna make sure nothing happens to you." And I said, "Okay." And as soon as he unlocked that door, when I walked in there, believe me, the lifestyle of homosexuality, and I do mean hardcore homosexuality, was introduced to me. Living in this environment, I was completely lost at this time. At this time, I had never had a desire for men. The thing is, these men were continually coming to me. They were attracted to me no matter where I would go, no matter what I would do, they were there. But it got to the point when I was introduced to this lifestyle, these guys that I was living with, they worked Monday through Friday, but on the weekends, they were basically hardcore drag queens. But it got to the point where this gentleman by the name of Benny, he became my family. He was there for me. He took care of me and he tended to me. But it got to the point, by the time I was 17 years old, I wanted to go out and party. And basically they would take me out to clubs with them. But the thing is, I couldn't go in at the time. They had me outside, and two gentlemen at a time would keep an eye on me, but they would rotate. But the thing is, I'd get drunk, and I got started doing my drugs. I was hardcore on drugs. And but it got to the point where I ended up finding out that these men, they'd come to me, and all of a sudden money would be handed in my hands, and no matter where I would go, they would tend to me. I'd be taken out to eat. I got to meet very wealthy men, ladies and gentlemen, and by the time I was 17 years old, there was one man that I got to meet, and he was very wealthy. He was from San Francisco, and it got to the point where he asked me to go spend some time with him, and at the time I didn't want to. I just liked money. I just liked him giving me money. But it got to the point, the first time that I did go out, he invited me to San Francisco, and he was one of the first ones that I got to meet, and nothing sexually with him whatsoever, but he introduced me to, how can I say, basically the enemy used him to open up my eyes on what it is to survive and how to make money. When I got to meet this gentleman, he took me to San Francisco, and when I was at the airport, he paid everything for me, and he was the first one. He bought my first airline ticket, but he got me a private jet. I was 17 years old at the time, and he was also working for the government, or a police officer. He was over there in San Francisco, but he did other work. He had other businesses on the side. But this gentleman was very, very wealthy, and I went to San Francisco with him, and he showed me a very, very luxurious way of life. But the thing is, I was just out there. I was lost. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I ended up coming back to Bakersfield. And when I came back, he ended up getting me an apartment. He got me an apartment, paid a whole year's rent for me, bought me brand new furniture and everything. And during this time, after a couple of years, I lost contact with him. But this apartment that I ended up getting, ladies and gentlemen, that's just when I ended up meeting a beautiful girl. She was a high school cheerleader. We got engaged. We were together for a little bit over a year. But during this time, we lived together and we were trying to make it, but the drugs were upon us hardcore. There was a lot of cocaine and everything around us. And she was a high school cheerleader, but the thing is with her, her mother had passed away, and it was a sister, her, and she had a little sister. She was the middle. And she had gone through a lot of issues with her dad. Her dad would never spend time with her. her dad owned some type of company, and I remember we'd go to the company every morning, and he would just give her cash, anywhere from $300 to $400 every morning if she wanted it. But to spend time with her, to take her out, none of that was around her whatsoever. So all this time, me and her were together. But during this time is when she ended up coming out pregnant, and but just the environment that I was around, I did not like. I was not happy whatsoever. And I tried my best to make it for her and I to achieve and to succeed. I was soon to be a dad. And I remember she was 6 months pregnant, and I would hear the baby's heartbeat and everything. And I didn't want to be in Bakersfield anymore. So what I ended up doing, I ended up moving back to Texas. I was here for about a week, a little bit over a week. And the next thing you know, because I was going to bring her to Texas to have the baby here in Texas from California. But the next thing you know, she called me and she told me she had a miscarriage. And I was so heartbroken. I went back to California, to Bakersfield. And the first few days that I was there, I ended up finding out that she didn't have a miscarriage. She ended up having an abortion. She was 6 months pregnant at the time. And when I found this out, I was very much hurt. I was heartbroken. And at that time, I basically lost respect for women. I wanted nothing to do with her. And I went through a lot. I went through a lot at the time. I was very young. I was 18 at the time. But basically, I lost respect for women. And I told myself I must not be man enough to be a man if I couldn't handle this. And this is what turned me into the lifestyle of homosexuality. And this is when I ended up finding my so-called first lover. I was with this guy. He was a blonde hair, blue eyes. He was a model and an actor. He came out in many movies. I was with him for a little bit over 2 years. But this is the first one that I started my relationships with. And when I was with him, we did many things together. We did good things together. We did some traveling. We got to go to different places. He took me to places to meet some actors, private parties with many people from Hollywood. And but it was awesome. I got to meet actors and everything. I got to go with them to modeling parties. It was awesome. I met some of the most famous actors I got to meet or bump into. But the thing is, in our relationship, many things started happening to where we started fighting. And this gentleman, he became very abusive. And I mean hardcore. The abuse, the physical abuse that started happening to me was so hardcore that I'm very embarrassed, or sometimes I don't even want to talk about. But things did happen to me that it's very heartbreaking. But the thing is, I survived. I survived all that. But the thing is, during our relationship, the only way for me to get away was to run away. And I ended up taking off to Los Angeles. So as soon as I got to Los Angeles, I got away from him. After that time, I didn't see him anymore. After 2.5 years of our relationship, I got away from that. But the thing is, once I moved to Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, no matter where I would go, I would find very wealthy men. I could be walking down the street and wealthy men would come to me. I was always around that environment out there in Santa Monica Boulevard. And, I was out there. But I guarantee you, within the first couple of days I was there, I found a few men to take care of me. The thing is, I was never happy with these men. They would take me to their house. They would tell me whatever, hey, Freddie, I would love to take care of you. I would want to be your lover. And I was just like, whatever. You know what I mean? I really didn't care. I just wanted to be fed and be tended to. But the thing is, deep in my heart, I wanted nothing to do with these people or this type of lifestyle. But the thing is, it got to the point where within a few days living there in Los Angeles, I ended up meeting this other gentleman, this young guy. He was also a model, but he was a model in fashion wear. But he also did, he was gifted in fighting. He knew karate and everything, and I mean hardcore karate. And he invited me to Honolulu, Hawaii. During this time, there was a big old riot in Los Angeles, to where some streets were being shut down and everything for this other things that were happening there in Los Angeles at the time. And we ended up moving to. He ended up taking me to Honolulu, Hawaii, Waikiki. He had some work to go over there to go do for modeling. But this guy, he was a very handsome guy, and no matter where we would go clubbing or whatever, and all of a sudden he would have his phone, and he would tell me, Freddie, wait right here, I'll be right back. And he would take off, and he'd be back within 30 to 40 minutes. And he always had money with him. No matter what happened, he always had money with him, no matter where he would go. But I wouldn't, at the time, I was just, I was into the drugs and into alcohol, you know what I mean? Just give me my Long Island iced tea, that's all I wanted. But he would come back, and he was tending to me. He would take care of me. But he was a very, very, very good looking guy. And he told me, he goes, Freddie, he goes, I'm going to take you to Honolulu, Hawaii for 2 weeks, and then we're going to come back. I said, okay. And he ended up doing that. And no matter where we would go, these women would just, boom, women were all around him. And I got to meet some very beautiful women through him. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, when I was there, when he took me to Honolulu, Hawaii, within the first few days I was there with him, the first day that we got there, we ended up, I was introduced to this older man. He was an owner of one of the biggest yachts there in Waikiki. And this gentleman by the name of Michael, he used to work for him. So that's where we ended up staying there. We ended up staying there for almost a month. And it was a beautiful yacht, one of the biggest yachts. But the first couple of weeks that I was there, me and Michael would take off. We would take off to Waikiki. He would take me different places out to eat, just to show me places. But during this time, he was constantly bringing up the conversation of Freddie. He goes, I know how you can make some easy money with using men. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he would tell me, he goes, Freddie, I can introduce you to a gentleman to have sex with him, and he'll pay you. And I'm like, you know what, Michael? I said, there's no way I'm going to do that. I want nothing to do with that. That's not me. I have no desire to do that. And it got to the point where he told me that for a few days, but it got to the point where he basically forced me into this way of life. And it was for a short time period, thank God. But the thing is, he had plans to take me to Waikiki, Honolulu, to get me into a sex trafficking ring. Basically, he tried to do his best to get me out there and to sold sexually to men. The thing is, the first time he did this, and a lot of people that are out there running away or being abducted and being forced, these people that are forced, they're actually abused and threatened to where they have no way of saying no. They have to do what they're ordered to do. And a lot of people don't really understand that, but I was there. And it's something very heartbreaking. When somebody threatens you and can beat you to where, and then you have the phone right there and there's no one to call or ask for help or nowhere to go, there's nothing you can do. And it got to the point where I had to give up. At the time, I gave up. And the first gentleman that he introduced me to was one of the most very wealthy men there in Waikiki. He was a president of a bank. He was an older man, never been married, had no children, and he was in stocks. He had all kinds of different businesses around him. And the first thing you know that was the first one. And I remember that when Michael took me to this gentleman, he introduced me to him. He let me in his beautiful home. And as soon as he saw me, this gentleman told me, he goes, I'm going to have you for one night. But I guarantee you the first 15 minutes that I got to spend with this gentleman, he called Michael. And he said, Michael, is there any way I can spend a few more days with Freddie? That's how I was basically in my younger years, ladies and gentlemen. I was basically known as a pretty boy. No matter where I would go, men were attracted to me. And it was nothing that I can't even explain it. They were there. And I guarantee you, this gentleman ended up keeping me for a couple of days. But he took me out. He took me to the most luxurious places there in Waikiki. And but the thing is, the gentleman that Michael would introduce me to, they would pay, and I mean pay a lot of money just to spend a few time, just to do things with me. Sexually, that is. But during this time, ladies and gentlemen, it's something very heartbreaking. I remember the first one that I went to, and Michael went to go talk to this gentleman in his home. And as soon as Michael turned around, I looked at Michael, and I was waiting for him to say, come on, Freddie, I'm not going to let you do this. And deep in my heart, that's what I was crying out for him to do. But I remember I turned around as he walked out, and I see him walking out of this big home, and it's like it was like I wasn't even there. And as he shut that door, I remember turning around and looking at this gentleman, and a whole different attitude came out of me. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? A smile came on my face and everything, because I had to survive. I was doing whatever I could to survive. But spending this time with this gentleman, many things, changed in my life. I was introduced to survival. It's a very wicked way of life, but I had to survive there for a while. But it got to the point where these men I got to meet, or I had to meet, it was very heartbreaking. It's very, very heartbreaking and very disgusting. But it's something that I went through. But during this time, ladies and gentlemen, I was introduced to one of his girlfriends. He had many girlfriends. And I ended up meeting one of his girlfriends. And she was going to college to be a business attorney. and she was a beautiful, to this day, she's a very beautiful, beautiful woman. And we got to meet and everything, and it got to the point where she and I started seeing each other. And during that time, this gentleman, Michael, he had to come back to, he had to take off to China for a modeling magazine. He had to go do some fashion wear over there, and that's what happened. He ended up taking off to China, and me and this one girl, we ended up falling in love. And she ended up finding out everything that had happened to me. So what she did, she and I moved to a whole different part of Waikiki, over there in Honolulu, Hawaii. And after that, she kept me away from Michael, and I didn't have no contact with him other than one more time after this. Other than that, she got me away from that wicked way of life, and that's something I see as God using her to get me away from that life. And God works in mysterious ways. That's all I got to say, and I'll never stop thanking Him. But during this time, ladies and gentlemen, she and I were together for over a year, and she became a business attorney. She had to finish school in Philadelphia, and she went to Philadelphia, and I ended up moving back to Los Angeles. And after that, our relationship, we ended up breaking up.
San Antonio global listeners, we're talking to Prophet Freddie Garcia, an experience that he went through from death to life. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back with him in just a few minutes. Yes, and with me today is Prophet Freddie Garcia. He's calling on that name today. But we're going to continue to listen to how he came out of darkness into the light with Prophet Freddie Garcia in KROV FM Radio.
Amen. With my testimony, ladies and gentlemen, amen. With my testimony, after the relationship did not work out with me, my wife-to-be from Honolulu, Hawaii, I ended up moving back to Los Angeles, and after that, I ended up moving back to Texas. During this time, I had a family member, a beautiful sister of mine, who lived a very hardcore life. She ended up getting engaged and married to a gentleman that's out there. He was lost and out in the world. And I was the only one in her wedding, and I'm the one that gave her to this gentleman. And 2 months after their wedding, he ended up killing her. And when all this stuff happened, I was very, very, very heartbroken. I was lost and I was heartbroken. And during this time is when I ended up meeting my first wife. She and I were married for 9 years, and she had a son, and we were blessed with 2 beautiful daughters. But during our relationship, I was not happy. She was not happy. The enemy attacked us, was continually attacking us. And during this time, I started having the desire for men. And that's something people need to realize. As a child, I never had the desire for men. I was molested no matter where I would go. And as a teenager, when I was out in the streets, I had to survive. And one way or another, the enemy used men to tend to me or to take care of me. But the desire was never there. But the thing is, one thing that I learned, instead of me fighting and rebuking all this attempt or the desires that were around me, I didn't do it. And that's something people need to realize, because this is the attack of the enemy. When there's things coming to you, or you're in a specific way of life, there's demonic spirits that are out there to attack. And that's what they did to me. And they got to the point where I didn't fight these spirits. I didn't know what I was doing spiritually. I had no idea. I was being attacked. But the thing is that these desires built up in me. And during this time that I was married, it got to the point where I desired flesh of men. And after our 9 years, we're going to file for a divorce. I had no desire for her anymore. We're going to go for our divorce. And during this time, I started a relationship with another gentleman. And but I was wicked, ladies and gentlemen. The desires of the flesh for the same sex built up in me, and I mean very hardcore and very wickedly. And I was out there. I'd wake up in the morning thinking of wickedness, and I'd go to bed thinking and doing wickedness. I was very wicked. But in 2002, ladies and gentlemen, I was in this relationship, but I had more than one relationship. I was with many, many men. And in 2002, all of a sudden, I was working in a nursing home. I was going to college to be a mortician. And all of a sudden, I wake up and I had a little bitty sting to my head, and it went away. And a few days later, I was at work. I used to work graveyard shift, nighttime, and all of a sudden I started getting a massive pain in my head, and they got to the point where it hurt hardcore. And it was 4 a.m, and I went and I reported to the RN, and I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I got a massive pain in my head. I can't stand it. I'm going home. And sure enough, she called somebody to take my place, and I did. She let me go home. I went home and I went to sleep. And in the morning, by 10 o'clock, I was up. And the next thing you know it, I go to the refrigerator and everything, but this massive pain came to me. And I mean, it was hardcore pain, to where I went and I threw myself on the sofa. And at that time, me and my ex-wife, we were going through our divorce. We were not even talking, but I ended up calling her. I called her. She was at work, and I told her. I said, you know what? I said, I have this massive pain in my head. I don't know what's going on. I can't take it. And by the tone of my voice, she knew immediately something was wrong with me. She said, Freddie, do you want me to call an ambulance? And I said, yes. So that's what she did. She called an ambulance, and within minutes, she made it, and 3 ambulance workers made it. They made it. And they checked my vitals and everything. Everything came out good. And this one gentleman that did my vitals, he was very, very nice. And he took my vitals, and he said, sir, there's nothing wrong with you. As soon as he said that, the other 2 workers were like, you know what, there's nothing wrong with him, let's go. But he turned around and said, you know what, I'm not done with him. But he kept on asking me questions and everything. And it got to the point where he said, Freddie, he goes, what would you like to do? Would you like us to take you to the emergency room? And I said, yes, please take me. This pain, ladies and gentlemen, in my head was hardcore. It felt like my brain was going to bust. And they ended up taking me to the hospital. And while I was there in the emergency room, something I'll never forget is my wife at the time. She was doing the paperwork, and I had my face down to my knees. I was in massive pain. But there's something I'll never forget, and I thank God for this gentleman. That ambulance driver that did my vitals and everything, he stood beside me, and he had his hand on my back. And this is something that's it's a blessing. And he was speaking in tongues. At the time, I didn't know what he was doing, but he was praying for me. And he prayed for me for a few minutes. And then all of a sudden, the other workers came to him, and they said, hey, we have another call. We have to go. And then he whispered into my ear. He said, Freddie, I'll keep you in prayer. God bless.
Philip, boy, what kind of music is that? Ooh, child, it's too much.